A criminal by the name of Jan van Riebeck landed in our native land and declared as a no man's land.
The properties of the French Huguenots and German refugees who came here running away from religious wars in Europe.
We should not make a mistake when we want equality and say we want to oppress whites.
We can never sit back and just accept that people's property is just simply going to be taken away.
Honourable members, two wrongs do not make a right.
We may disagree on the modalities, but the principle we agree.
We only have to look at Zimbabwe to see what the consequences of that is.
There is no investor who will leave the country.
Land ownership in South Africa has always been a highly charged issue. Under apartheid, blacks were discriminated against when it came to property rights. But the slow pace of reform since the dawn of democracy in 1994 left many people frustrated.
We owe it to our children to refute the myth that Africans are not friends of commercial agriculture, where, because of the disruption of colonialism and apartheid, we have lost farming skills. We have an opportunity to enter agricultural colleges and learn from other successful commercial farmers. It is in the interests of our common and inclusive future to have more successful commercial farmers, and this administration is fully committed to provide the necessary support.
Tuesday, 27th February 2018, lawmakers adopt a controversial motion on land reform by a wide margin. This paves the way for government to seize property without compensating owners.
Honourable members, the outcome of the division is as follows. Those in favour 241, those against 83, there's no abstentions, and the motion as amended is therefore agreed to.
The governing African National Congress calls it a victory for people of South Africa.
The question of land, as you will know, it's a historical injustice. And it is victory for the people of South Africa. And the question of land audit does demonstrate that we have not tampered with land redistribution fundamentally to the point that the dispossessed can lay their claim to the belief that land has actually been brought back.
The ANC had resolved at its 54th National Conference in December 2017 to take land without compensation.
The Lekgotla has called on government to urgently initiate a process to finalize the modalities for the implementation of the National Conference resolution to expropriate land without compensation as one of the key mechanisms available to government to effect land reform and redistribution. And the Lekgotla reaffirmed the utilization of this mechanism must ensure, amongst other things, food security, greater agricultural output, and complement our efforts to attract investment and economic growth. The accelerated land reform program must be executed in an orderly manner and continue to call for strong action against those who occupy land unlawfully. And this program of land reform must further have clear targets and timeframes, be guided by sound legal and economic principles, and must contribute to our country's overall job creation and investment targets.
We should see the land reform process, the expropriation of land without compensation, as an opportunity rather than as something that is negative. We should take it upon our shoulders to resolve this original sin. We should resolve this problem that was imposed on our people, and in doing so, we should ensure that we use this opportunity to grow our economy. We should use this opportunity to make sure that agricultural production goes higher and higher. And we should use this opportunity to make sure that food security is not compromised.
Tripartite alliance partner COSATU urges all political parties to work together to achieve this common goal.
We salute the ANC for supporting the FF motion on land reform. We encourage black political parties to work together in changing the lives of the poor majority and in transforming the ownership patterns of the economy.
The ANC resolution had gotten the ball rolling, but it is actually the opposition economic freedom fighters that tabled the motion.
All we are saying is that, as the EFF, let us subject the whole thing to consultation. We don't have a problem. We cannot come and meet here as a group of elite and take a decision on behalf of our people. Let it be referred to committees. Let our people be consulted. Let ordinary South Africans make input. We are not opposed to that. As long as this parliament agrees that indeed we are at one, but let us go and take a further mandate from our people. So we are happy as the EFF with the types of amendment the ANC want to make. This is not about party politics. This is about an issue of national interest.
Those against 83, there's no abstention.
The ANC agrees with the motion in principle, as it resonates with the party's policy resolutions.
That when there's instability in the department,
The ANC unequivocally supports the principle of land expropriation without compensation as moved by the EFF. Honorable Speaker, we may disagree on the modalities, but the principle we agree. There's no question about that. And we are committed to implementing the resolution of the African National Congress, which resonates very well with the motion led by the CIC of the EFF.
However, the opposition Democratic Alliance, Freedom Front Plus, COPE and ACDP fiercely oppose it. They say taking land without paying for it will only perpetuate injustices.
we must have meaningful land reform. We cannot deny the dispossession of both colonialism and apartheid. Various legislative proposals, the Glen Grey Act, the Pegging Act, the Group Areas Act, the Native Land Act of 1913. These are all legislative processes which cause dispossession, and we must address these. But we can do it by passing legislation as the Constitution envisages. We don't need to amend the Constitution.
Let's not forget history of conquest, of land dispossession through wars of colonial conquest by white people, through forced removals, through the slave labor in the farms, prisoners sold to the farms. Let's not forget the infamous potato farms in Bethal, Mpumalanga, the continued attacks, dispossession of livestock and murder in the farms in Piet Retief, Wakkerstroom, Pongola and elsewhere. And today, the descendants of those brutal land dispossessors sit here in suits and ties and want to pontificate to us. What nerve, what arrogance. To them we say as the APC, go away, angels of darkness. Flee to the far corners of nothingness. You will never fool us. If you deny the historical injustice of brutal, heartless land dispossession, nothing else you say matters to me anymore.
I have to raise this question. Are you going to take the properties of the great-grandchildren of the Indian indentured laborers who came here?
Order, Speaker.
Whose properties are you going to take? Are you going to take the properties of the French Huguenots and German refugees who came here running away from religious wars in Europe?
Point of order.
Whose properties are you going to take?
What's your point of order?
A criminal by the name of Jan van Riebeck landed in our native land and declared an already occupied land by the native population as a no man's land. Van Riebeck, the first descendant of the Dutch to arrive in the Cape, will later lead a full-blown colonial genocide, anti-black land dispossession criminal project, arguing that simply because our people could not produce title deeds, this land that they have been living in for more than 1,000 years was not their own. Essentially, he was disregarding their humanity, treating them as part of the animal world. To him, and many who would have come long after him, the Africans were less than human, not deserving of land ownership.
The ACDP will therefore not support this motion before us because we believe expropriation of land without compensation is another forced takeover of land which involves paying evil with evil. Honourable members, two wrongs do not make a right. Expropriation of land without compensation has historically destabilized economies as it destroys investor confidence and scares foreign investors. The ACDP will not place ownership of land in the hands of the state, which would then lease it to its citizens. True economic freedom is guaranteed more by innovation, industry and productivity rather than by radicalism and rebellion.
Honorable Reverend Mishwe, please agree with me when I say those who have taken our land by force, Jesus Christ must reject their prayers.
But the motion succeeds despite the opposition. This paves the way for a review of the clauses that until now required government to pay for land it appropriates. The Constitutional Review Committee of Parliament will review Section 25 and other clauses where necessary. The Review Committee must report back to Parliament by 30 August 2018.
Well, I think we're looking for the problem in the wrong place. There was not a problem with the willing buyer, willing seller principle. The problem was with government. We saw a lot of corruption, that land that was, money that was allocated for land reform that was simply stolen. We saw a lack of administrative ability to make sure that this process runs smoothly. And because the fault was at government, they're now trying to say the fault is elsewhere. And we believe that is simply wrong. We need to have a situation where we look for a problem where the real problem is, and that is how it was done. The second big issue is that government, if they take land, they don't give it as property to black people. It stays government property, and they only give black people the right to use that land for farming. But no farmer anywhere can be successful if they don't have access to capital and resources. And you need to have land that is your property to be able to use it as a guarantee, to be able to get the resources to be successful. So with the current system of nationalization where government keeps the land for themselves, they actually set up black farmers for failure.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, EFF leadership, members of the House.
The motion is passed just before the results of the latest South African land audit are released. The report reveals the grim reality of skewed private ownership of land in the country. White South Africans own 72% of land and property, Coloureds 15%, Indians 5%. Black Africans only own 4% of the land, although they are the majority.
Land audit shows that land was taken from black people, and this is a historical fact. Land was stolen. In fact, this kind of discussion, oh, you know, look at how bad the land patterns are, is yesterday's discussion. We are done. There's national consensus amongst black people. We're not interested to talk to Agri-SA, talk to land thieves, talk to those who benefited from colonialism and apartheid. No, it's black people now talking. We are no longer asking the question of whether we should do land redistribution or not. We are saying we're not going to pay for it. It must be done without paying compensation. And all the African people, black people, are agreed on this question.
It's very interesting that today we are speaking about being very calm and we do not want to cause any turbulences. That very same section was indeed one of the sections that privileged a few and disadvantaged the majority of the people of this country. Therefore, our expectation as SANCO is that government must put in place a process that will expedite the process of smooth handing over. We don't only just want land, we also want to have people to have title deeds. Because if you give a person by word or by structure a piece of land without a document, and we want those title deeds to be processed without further incurrence of financial costs to be paid by the citizens of the country.
The fact that as the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, we are very much happy of the fact that the country today is alive to the reality and the fundamental principle of land ownership. This to us, it comes at a time when we are commemorating throughout the country the 40th anniversary of one of the founding fathers of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, Ubaba Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, who served us exceptionally well, who was crucified, who was vilified, who was humiliated, and finally poisoned for championing and orchestrating that is the issue of the land, that Africa is for Africans, Africans for humanity, and humanity for God.
The land resolution could go a long way towards righting past wrongs, but will it also initiate an open season for racial violence?
Well, I think it's a very dangerous route to take, and we only have to look at Zimbabwe to see what the consequences of that is. When you don't respect property rights, you destroy the economy, and all people are simply poor. We must remember that in Zimbabwe, under the Mugabe regime, people fled the country to South Africa because they struggled to survive, simply because international investors withdrew and the economy collapsed. So we are very worried about the fact that irrespective that we have an example of what happens if you do this, you still have people that want to go ahead and destroy the country's economy.
Legal land grabs may have unintended consequences for the economy.
No, we can never sit back and just accept that people's property is just simply going to be taken away. So, of course, we will engage the committee, the review committee that is going to be set up. But we also believe that we should make sure that there is international pressure, because we know that the international investors won't invest in a country where they don't feel that the investments are safe. And we need those investors to now come to the fore and tell the country, and especially Parliament and government, what the implications would be of this new policy, and that they would lose investments. But we have to make sure that those investors know what is happening in the country to put pressure on the South African government, and that is why we announced that we are now going also on an international campaign to ask the international community to put pressure on government.
Some analysts, however, downplay the importance of foreign investment to South Africa.
We do not need foreign direct investment in South Africa in order for the South African economy to prosper. South Africa has got resources. South Africa has got everything that it needs to grow. We only need political will, and we only need the ingenuity and the hard work of our people. But for any policies like expropriation of land to happen, we only need South Africa to retrace its roots, because we know that we are scared that any time we start implementing policies that are in the interest of black people of this country, we are always scared of an onslaught or terrorist activities from white monopoly capital and foreign direct investment. So any time that the country or any time that black people start to organize, come together to reclaim the economy and implement policies that will ensure that black people are not excluded from the economy, there is uncertainty in the market. All of a sudden, foreign direct investment is threatened. So that is the contradiction that we have today. If we don't address this contradiction, we will forever be enslaved to a narrative that seems to suggest to us that if we expropriate land, if we give our people back their dignity, then we are going to scare away foreign investors. Remember that South Africa is South Africa because of the Berlin Conference. So all the artificial borders you see around us are a creation of the Berlin Conference in 1884 to 1885. So we have to be sure that we have enough black people in Africa to support us the moment we divorce our marriage with foreign direct investment. Because Africa is able to trade amongst itself. Inter-Africa trade is the future of South Africa. We have the market. Remember that black people have power, and this power comes from our power as consumers. In order to resuscitate the economy of South Africa and to allow the economy to grow, we need to industrialize the economy. And we have not been able to industrialize because neoliberal economics does not allow us. We have been enslaved to policies designed by the IMF and World Bank, which keep South Africa enslaved and under subjugation. And we can only do this by merging our economies together as African nations, becoming one power bloc that will be able to compete on the international market. South Africa cannot compete on the international market until it forms alliances, until it merges with other African nations that want to create this economic bloc that will allow Africa to present itself as a force on the global market.
With so many pitfalls, could the Rainbow Nation find creative solutions that will help avert disaster? In 2006, the Moloteli community reoccupied land which traditionally belonged to them in Hoedspruit, Limpopo. However, a lack of cash, training and limited market access sent their first farm into liquidation.
The main reason for our success, let me say, the first one is the stability of the community. You know, if the community is not stable, then really you are going to experience problems, because they will mushroom a consent group or differing ideas of how you should run the farms, and then ultimately, then the business will collapse.
In 2014, after realizing they couldn't do it alone, they reached out to the local commercial farmers like Peter Scholz.
Within 3 years, we fully developed all the farms. It's about 160 hectares of orchards, or even more. And even last year, after the second year, we already paid a profit over to them. It was small, and this year it's going to be a much bigger profit. And we just want the farms to be profitable, successful.
In other areas of South Africa, this has rarely been the case.
In a number of projects or land that was transferred to communities, as it were, it ended up being unproductive, which is why organizations such as us, as Vumelani, we've partnered with the Department of Rural Development to make sure that we can turn that around, working jointly with the communities, with the private sector, and with government.
The Moloteli chief warns against political posturing. He says if you grab land without the technical know-how, it will be a fruitless exercise. With only 3% of the country's land transferred, many hope that the Moloteli lesson is one that South Africa will embrace.
What this moment requires is for people to engage with each other and to come up with proposals that can lead to a just and sustainable outcome. There is no need for any one of us to panic and to start beating war drums. Farming activities must continue as normal, and investments in land and farming must continue, because we are going to handle this matter in the way that we have always handled difficult matters in our country, by dialogue, by discussion, by engagement, until we find good solutions that will take our country forward.